If this man can correctly pronounce my dog's name on the very first try, I bet he's the one. I'm going to tell you that story, but first I need to tell you about the prayer that started everything. Have you ever prayed for something, like really prayed and God answered it, and it still left you feeling completely empty? Like you got the success, the relationship, the thing you've been chasing, and instead of feeling full, you felt more alone than ever. And somewhere deep down, you started wondering, does God really see me? Does he know what I'm going through? And I want to tell you something today that I needed someone to tell me when I was a young woman, sitting on the steps of the most beautiful cathedral in Milan, Italy, praying a prayer that God was about to answer in the most unexpected way of my life. Look, God sees you. He sees every tear you've cried in the dark. He hears every prayer you've whispered when you weren't even sure he was real, and he will answer you, but probably not in the way that you will expect, but he will answer. My name is Jennifer Strickland. I'm a wife, mom, author, and a speaker, and a woman who's walked through some pretty dark valleys. But I'm here today because God pursued me, and he sent the most unexpected messengers to bring me home. He sees you too, and he's got a message for you today. I want to take you back to Milan, Italy. I was a young model sitting on the steps of the Duomo, the big, huge church right in the middle of the city. If you've never seen the Duomo, it's one of the most magnificent buildings in the world, and it's impossible to sit in front of it and not feel something. And I prayed a simple prayer: God, please give me success as a model. Short, specific, and bold. And then it kind of happened for me. I was in Italian Vogue. I was in Glamour and Cosmopolitan. I did the runway for Giorgio Armani. I was on posters in store windows. I flew between Milan and Munich and Paris and New York and Miami and Hollywood. I was even hired as the face of Barbie for the 35th anniversary of the doll. Seriously, I know it's crazy. It's a story for another day. But by every measure the world uses, I had kind of made it. And here's what no one tells you about getting everything that you prayed for. You can be standing in the middle of your answered prayer and feel more empty than ever. Because on the inside, I was so lonely. And eventually that business took my soul. I became bone thin. I was barely eating. I was cold all the time, the kind of cold that comes from the inside. And my hair started falling out. My skin was breaking out. And none of that was even the worst part. The worst part was that I had gotten what I prayed for, but it felt like a facade. It felt fake, like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, and she gets to the Oz and it's just a guy pulling strings. The world had given me these promises, but it was not enough. And it was never going to be enough. And then one night after a phone call home that left me feeling really confused, I got down on my knees in my apartment in Milan, and I can still feel the sharp pain of my bony knees against that hardwood floor. And I cried out for love. I was like, look, the magazines and the clothes, they don't mean anything to me, God, without love. If you hear me, please send me someone to love. And I didn't even really believe in God or know that he was listening. But this is the part that might change how you pray. God didn't send me a person. He sent me a dog. I'm serious. He sent me a dog. I went away for the weekend, this little bed and breakfast in the mountains, just to clear my head. And one morning I was sitting by the window looking out at the water, and this little white dog with a brown face and a wishbone of fur on her nose came tumbling through the door, and she ran straight up to me and curled next to my leg and started licking my hands. Sei abbandonata, the signora told me, which means she had been abandoned. Left in the rainstorm, and she had scratched her way back to this little warm hostel in the cold. And I looked at her, this little abandoned dog, and I felt like she knew how I felt, and something softened inside of me. And the Signora placed her in my arms the morning I left and said, a little gift for you. And I brought her back to Milan. I named her Bosco after the woods where I found her. And she was as out of place in that big city as I was, honestly. But having Bosco made me slow down and walk in the parks and take better care of myself. I had to feed her, and I started feeding myself too a little more. And at night, she would cuddle in my lap and lick my hands, even when I was a mess. Even when I felt ugly and I had pimples and I felt rejected and I had nothing to offer. She didn't care what I looked like in the pictures. She didn't expect me to be perfect. She just loved me. And God was teaching me something through that little dog. He was showing me what he felt for me, that he was never going to leave my side. In fact, I even tried to give her to a family to take her, but she wouldn't leave my side. And the love I had cried out for was reaching back for me. And eventually I started living over in Munich, modeling there, and that's when I hit the lowest point of my life. I remember one time sitting alone at the kitchen table one night, watching the snow out the window, and Bosco wasn't with me then. She was back in the States with my family. And I know this sounds crazy, but I literally got up this one night and set the table for two. I poured 2 bowls of spaghetti, 2 glasses, and sat and ate next to an empty chair, just wishing that someone who knew me and loved me at my worst would be there with me and believe in who I could become when I got out of this mess. And that night, the darkness tried to take me down. I didn't feel like I wanted to keep on living, but I kept thinking about this phrase that I learned in Italian. La luce è più forte dell'oscurità. It means the light is stronger than the dark. And the next morning, I decided not to go to my interviews and just to go down to the park for a walk down by the river Isar in Munich. And I heard the sound of these drums and followed the sound to this big white stone gazebo where there was all these people hanging out. And this one guy was playing the guitar, and he reached out into a box of books and he pulled out a book and he handed it to me, and it said Das New Testament. The New Testament. I was like, oh, okay, this is the Bible. And he was with this funky group of people. They only spoke a little broken English, but they were super kind to me, and they invited me to church on a Friday night. And I didn't know a soul in the country. I had nothing to do on Friday night, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll go. Well, that night when they realized that I was alone in the park, they walked me to the edge of the park and they circled around me and started praying for me in German. And I didn't understand a single word, but I think I started to feel not so alone. And that Friday, they took me to their little church. And I remember when they opened the door, it was really cold and snowy in Munich, but all this warm air rushed out. There was people that were laughing in there and children running around, and there was joy there. And I hadn't really seen that in the modeling industry. And again, I didn't understand a word of the entire service. But a few weeks later, I kept going back, and this 16-year-old girl named Naomi started running towards me with this little Bible in her hand. She's like, Jennifer, I found you an English Bible. It's the good news. You can read it. And I think when she handed it to me, it was like someone was handing me a cold glass of water, and I started drinking it. And not long after that, I climbed to not up to the top, but to the highest mountain in Germany, Mount Zugspitze. I lay down in the snow and I opened the window of my heart and I asked Jesus to come into my heart. And it was like fresh breath. It was like I was born again. I was truly made new. And now I understand something that I didn't see then. That prayer at the Duomo, God give me success, he answered it. The prayer on the floor in Milan, send me love, he answered it through a dog by showing me his unconditional love for me. And the empty chair at the table in Munich, He later answered that and gave me the family and the love that I was longing for. And this is what's so funny is that when I met my husband, Shane, I prayed to God, okay, if he's the one, I pray that he will pronounce Bosco's name correctly the first time that he meets her. My dog, because everybody would always call her Bosco, which was like so American, but it wasn't correct. It was Bosco. And so when Shane met my dog for the very first time, he pronounced her name correctly. And I was like, okay, I'll go on a date with you. Oh my goodness. But a few years after that we were married, we had 2 little babies sleeping in the next room. And Shane really challenged me. He was like, I fell in love with this woman who was going to write a book to help girls and tell her story, and you need to write it. And I made all these excuses. I was too busy taking care of these babies. And he was like, no, we watch Netflix every single night. Like, you could go in that room and write, and don't let your fear stop you. And he believed in me. And you know, today my table is full, and my kids have all been raised on the spaghetti that I learned to cook from the grandmother in the south of Italy. And God answered every single prayer, every one, in his way and in his time. And maybe you're watching this today and you feel unseen or unheard by God, or maybe you've gotten what you prayed for and it still left you empty. In 2 Kings 20 verse 5, God says, I've heard your prayer and I've seen your tears and I will heal you. Not I will think about it, not come back to me when you're cleaned up. He says, I hear your cries and I see your tears and I will heal you. But it may not look like what you expect. I prayed for love and he sent me a dog. He sent messengers. And sometimes you are that messenger. You might be the person in the park handing out Bibles. You might be the teenage girl running at me with the Good News Bible in her hand. You might be the husband who says, I see you, I know you, I love you, I know what you're afraid of, but you have to do the thing that God is calling you to do. Your story is not invisible to him. He hears you, he loves you, and he will answer in his way and in his time. So keep your heart open to the messengers he will send for you. And if you're broken, cry out to him. Tell him, prove yourself to me, show yourself to me, heal my heart, and he will. I did finish writing that book, and I wrote it for you. It's called Girl Perfect. It's my whole story, the Duomo, the runway, the models, Milan, Bosco, meeting Shane, the mountain, and all the amazing things that God showed me about his love. And how I learned to cook the most amazing spaghetti in the world. So I wrote it so you would know that you are not alone and there is a way home. There's a book, there's a Bible study to help you identify the lies you might believe and the truths that really do set you free. There's a group kit if you want to do it with your friends, and there's even a documentary that you can watch. My name is Jennifer Strickland, and I just wanted to tell you, you are more than what the world says that you are. You are God's daughter, and he sees you, he hears you, and he will heal you.